Welcome. So I'm going to pin Adam, pin Angie, pin me. There we are. So welcome to our event. We are really excited to be having this conversation. We had a bit of technical difficulties, as is tradition when using Zoom. So thank you for your patience. We have put this event together to zoom in on what confidence means for leaders and teams. And so I invited Adam and Angie and also Ilana, who can't be with us today because she's not very well. She passes on her hellos and wishes she could be here. But I invited Angie and Adam here as two clients and supporters of UPFRONT from very different sectors and very different roles with different teams. And so the kind of premise of this conversation is to talk about why investing in confidence is a leadership priority, why it should be a leadership priority, regardless of what sector you're in, where you sit in the organisation. So I've encouraged all of you to come along today, bring your boss, bring your team. So really warm welcome to those of you who are new to UPFRONT. We are an organisation on a mission to support 1 million women with confidence. My name is Lauren Curry and I am the founder and CEO here at UPFRONT. Kim and Shakira and Sarah, also from our team, are here today. So Kim and Shakira can answer any questions you might have in the chat, but hopefully we will have time for a bit more of an open dialogue before the end of the session. So without further ado, I'll ask both our lovely guests to introduce themselves. So Angie, you want to go first?
Well, nice to be prefixed with lovely.
Yeah.
Thanks, Lauren. Thanks for having me. So I'm Angie, and I broadly describe my mission as helping create the leaders and environments that we all deserve. So I work in organisational development, EX. I'm also a coach, and I lean on the strengths framework and servant leadership kind of principles and practices. So that's me.
And we met through your role at Sullivan Stanley, and
Yes.
They are a consultancy, right?
Yeah, a change consultancy who've been around for 7 years. And I know it's 7 years because we give everybody a 7-day weekend for the 7th birthday. We started on 4 days and it went to 5. I think it'll probably have to end at 10. So yeah, a fabulous change consultancy. And I joined Pat Lyons and the team for a 90-day piece of work to help pull together a framework for how you scale the people part of the business. And 2 years later, I was still there. So I've moved on now, but I spent 2 years with Pat and the team.
Yes. And lots of love to any Sullivan and Stanley folks who are here with us today. So Adam, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, hi everybody. My name's Adam. I'm CPO at a small Manchester scale-up called Viper, where we're trying to rethink how kind of businesses build products by using consumer research. Before that, I spent most of my career, pretty much all of it actually, in like big business. So I worked for Asda and Co-op, so lots of time in retail, as well as spending time at O2 and also Travelex.
Yes, and we met during your time at Co-op. And Co-op were one of our first clients when it was still just me running in-person workshops. And Co-op invited me to come and run kind of 2-day workshop with your people, and it went so well that we did that kind of year upon year. And then when our digital bond launched, I know that you and Catherine and others were really front of the queue to be part of that. So I guess the first question, which is how we frame the conversation, that I would love to ask you both is why, from your perspective, why is it important to invest in the confidence of your teams? You know, of course, one way and the way that we think's best is to do that through UPFRONT. But putting that aside, you know, there's lots of ways that you can support the confidence and growth in your people. Why is that important, do you think, Angie?
So 2 things I'd probably say. First of all, you've used the L word, the leadership word. So for me, leadership is not about Have you still got me? Can you see me?
Yeah, I don't know what happened there.
Went a bit weird, didn't it?
Yeah, I'll keep going.
I'll carry on. So leadership for me is not about position, it's about behavior, and what fuels leadership behavior.
Mhm.
It's confidence. Confidence, I think, in my view, is the kind of fuel for the currency of leadership, which is influence. So my belief is you are more likely to be able to influence in a way that suits you, in a way that is true to you, where you can be your best self, if you've got more than a sprinkling of confidence. And we need more leaders. I mean, my bread and butter is about growing and developing leaders. And there's never been more of a shortage of great leadership behavior. So confidence fuels that. I think it gives you the ability to speak up, to take risks, to innovate, to pull people together, and then sometimes to belt up, to shut up and let other people take the lead. So I think that's one of the reasons why we should invest in confidence. And the other thing is, the world that we're in, often we call it a VUCA world or a BANI world or a tuna world, all those acronyms to describe the kind of crazy world we're in. We're only going to get out of this by leaning into all of us, into the diversity of every group. And we need to build confidence for everybody to speak up, so we're not sucked into groupthink. So for me, it's got a really strong bottom line benefit. It's not about the feels and the fluff. It's about business performance and contribution.
Yeah, I love the framing of the fuel for the currency of leadership, which is influence. It feels really right. It's about influence and persuasion, regardless of what your kind of circle of influence looks like, right? I think something that we always want to double down on is agency. It's like helping people realize that often you have much more agency than you think you do, especially when you're in a big organization and can get overwhelmed with the scale of the systems that need to change or the processes that need to exist for things to happen. Adam, what's your kind of stance on why investing in confidence is important?
Yeah, it's interesting. I actually didn't think of the leadership angle, but you can certainly see, I suppose, the folks that I've worked with who have been through some of the upfront, you can see that trajectory in people. And I think the thing for me that I thought about with this was, like, we're expecting people to be innovative and kind of, solve problems. And to be innovative involves taking risks. And it's, how can you take risks if you don't have a bed of confidence on which to take said risks? A lack of confidence breeds, kind of like risk adverse behavior. So it's important to give people that confidence in themselves and the belief in themselves to know that they can move forward, which I think leads to kind of, better outcomes for teams. I suppose the other thing is, if you think about, I work in digital and tech, so a lot of the teams are kind of like product teams, multidisciplinary, where, collaboration is kind of front and center of what we want to try and do. Well, when you've got teams who need to collaborate, you want equal participation from across the team, across the disciplines. And you're only going to get that if you can, obviously you can have people on the team who are very aware of this and can manage and involve everybody else's contributions. But if we can increase the base level of confidence in a lot of the folks on those teams, it will lead to better collaboration where people can be more expressive of their views and opinions as we're trying to work together. And I think ultimately that will lead to making better decisions. So you can look at it and say, if teams are more confident, people are more confident, you be more innovative, more risk-taking, you can make better decisions and work better together. So for me, it wasn't, I completely take Angie's point on leadership. What I'm saying is as a blind side to me. I hadn't thought of that, but I think about it as a net increase in the overall performance for a team.
Love that. Angie?
Yeah, I just want to build on that final point, Adam. So, you just struck a chord on something for me as well. So I'm thinking about the group of women from Sullivan and Stanley that joined the bond, and there were 6 and me. So the business environment is really tough. resources are really tight, and so we need everybody to contribute in their own way. So I'm thinking, I made some notes before the call of all those individuals from that group and the benefits that I saw to them, and the different things that happened to them that they drove on the back of Bond. And I'm thinking about, a couple of members that took the lead on growing the associate community, and actually that freed up some resource to go and do something else. They needed less support. They were able to lead that piece of work. They were more self-sufficient. So it freed resource up to do other things. That sounds awful, doesn't it? Talking about people as resource, but it just meant that, we were able to lead pieces of the work with one person rather than 2 or 3. And on a team that was quite small, freeing that resource up made a huge difference.
Yeah, it touches on a theme that comes up a lot in these conversations, which is time. And so this comes from, obviously our bond is built so that individuals can come and sign themselves up. So Sarah can come along and say, I want to do this and I'm going to buy myself a ticket and go on this journey. And then there's other folks like yourselves who will say, okay, I want to put 20 of our product department through this. We want to put 10 of our engineers through this, where it's more of a team led. But there's a very present barrier, I think, from both those groups, which is, I already don't have any time. Like, how am I going to find the time to commit to this? And I know this is across the board of all kind of learning and development activity, where it's that classic thing of you need to take the time out to do the learning, and then in the long run you save time. But I wonder how you both think about that when it comes to, putting the business case together for learning and growth activity that will mean, for the bond, it's 3 hours a week is the study time that we recommend. It's all self-led. Those 3 hours can be when you wish, but it's still 3 hours that you're not working on the day job, you're not working on the project that you're currently working on. So how would you frame that in terms of, from someone in your position who might want to sponsor their team, and also just as an individual thinking, how can I justify this time when I'm already, struggling to take a lunch break?
Yeah, I think not to be controversial, but I think from a manager's perspective, the time thing is a bit nonsensical. People can often complain about training, being a couple of hours in a week. If somebody's off sick, you've lost 8 hours of them that week and you've got no control over that at all. People take holidays, and they can be off for 2 weeks. You have very little control over it. So actually, people are going to come and go throughout the working week, throughout the working period of time. And I think if we get so hung up on, can somebody have 3 hours? I'm sure if people started to clock in and clock out their time, they'd go, well, I'm working more than the 7.5 hours I'm being paid for. It's a bit unreasonable that you won't give me these 3 hours. So I think that's purely from the business case perspective. Is I almost think it's not much of a consideration, because people's time is more fluid than people realize. It's different than if somebody was working in a factory or working in a retail store where their shift started at this very specific time and their shift ended at this very specific time, and they would have to get cover for 3 hours for someone to come and be in the store while they went on the training. I think in a lot of the businesses that we work in, time and our time doesn't work like that. So I think you get way more out of it than you will put into it. So I never really looked at the time investment in that way.
I did have to warm the rest of the team up to say we need to make sure that time is protected for this. So I probably took a more traditional approach to say, respect that we've invested in this. The whole team is going to benefit from this. So the whole team needs to think about how we can use our energy over this 6 weeks, how we can carve time up, how we prioritize together, which the team did anyway, through, sprints and stands up. So let's just be careful we're not putting too much more in the top of the hopper, because it's just not going to get done. So let's be realistic, and everybody's going to benefit from this. We'd already done some work around, bizarrely, energy and time management, because everybody struggles with time management, and the 3 laws of time management never go away. there's never enough time, always takes you longer to do things than you think. And the final one, which is what, Murphy's or Sod's law, which is if it can go wrong, it'll go wrong.
I'm not familiar with the 3 rules of time. I feel like I've learned something new today.
Yeah, my 3 rules of time management are Parkinson's law, which is, it always takes longer to do things than you think. The second one, which is we always underestimate the amount of time it takes to do things, and the work fills the time. And the third one is that one I've just mentioned. If it can go wrong, it will. So if you write those down, you're going to be somewhere around that triangle. So be realistic, not put too much more in the hopper and the prioritization. I think, I don't want to jump ahead too much, but I loved that one of the first modules on the bond was around language.
Mm-hmm.
And we as a team on that bond benefited so much from that first module. I'm sure it's there for a particular reason. We benefited so much from that language around, saying no, pushing back, making requests, being assertive. And that made a huge difference even after the first week.
Mm-hmm.
I've been able to say, I'd love to help you with that, but I can't. It's going to have to wait. Or I can do A or B. Which one is it?
Yeah.
Or even not doing the big flowery emails and just responding saying, yes, I can meet. Is it Tuesday or Wednesday? Rather than, well, I can't because I'm doing this and kind of stuff. And then the other thing about time is I do think it's important that whatever your structure, that you tap into whoever line manages, supervises, mentors, organises the work for individuals so that they are supportive and sympathetic. One of my learns being in that kind of L&D space for so many years is it's the leader or the manager that can really make or break it. If they start undermining the time that you put aside, and they're not asking you how you're getting on, they're not coaching you through it, they're not supporting you. So I think, whatever that role is, whoever supports you the most at work, they really need to be on side too. So they've got a really key role in supporting people through the bond.
Mm-hmm.
That's a bit long-winded, but I think you do have to tackle it and tackle it a bit head on.
No, I think you're right. Adam, you're nodding vigorously.
Yeah, I think especially around the point of you've got to have the manager support, and you've got to reflect the workload, so when a team or an individual is planning their work for the week, you can't look at a typical week and then go, right, I'm going to do the same, but I'm also just going to fit 3 hours in here somewhere, or I'm going to fit this period of time in here somewhere. That's going to be accounted for within that overall plan. And I think that's how you can enable people to do this and not feel guilty about the fact they're doing it, not feel like they're letting somebody else down, or that other people are picking up the slack for them, or it's got to make sure it's a core part of someone's role. Personal development is something that's important, or should be important to everybody. It's not like it's an extracurricular activity and they're off doing this nice thing over here while we're all doing the hard work over here. It's like, no, this is them doing the job, is attending this so that they can help the entire team, and it's just going to be fully accommodated for and fully supported by the person's manager and the entire team.
I think that's a really key point. This kind of it's on the side. Learning is an event. It's something you do rather than it's in the work. So, we really encouraged, the folks on the bond to come back weekly and say one thing they'd learn or one thing they wanted to share. So it kept it alive and real, and also got them to kind of practice some of the skills quite quickly, rather than it being this, thing they'd gone away to do. We were showing the benefits quite early.
Yeah, that's a really nice idea. And we're kind of building up a bit of a bank of different ways that we've seen teams and leaders do that. So one way is come and share on Slack or share in a meeting, one thing you learned through the bond this week. Others, it might be, we want you to write a blog post at the end of your 6 weeks about what you've learned. Or we know we've had teams say, where they're going to give a presentation to the board at the end, which of course at the start of the 6 weeks sounds absolutely terrifying, and none of them want to do that. And then by the end, yes, we need to tell them and start to make changes. And, I think the time piece is something that probably I used to get a bit frustrated about. Adam, I feel a bit like you. It's just let's let's be real here. It's part of our kind of obsession with busyness and productivity, and it starts to get a bit meta. But what we decided to do was really own it as, I think, confidence and lack of time are actually really connected. And we've made a point now, one of the first exercises we go through in the bond is we've created a whole bunch of scripts for the bonders to use at home and at work. And exactly to your point, Angie, whether it's a script to reply to say, thank you for thinking of me, thank you for the invitation. Unfortunately, I'm committed to XYZ, so I'll no longer be, I'll no longer be available. And we also made scripts for home life, which it was really interesting to me that those were the ones that got the most reaction and response, because often the women were saying, like, this is the first time that we've actually sat down and had a proper conversation about like household labor, childcare, that the work that goes on to keep a house and a family running between, whether it's co-parents, spouses, partners, to say, I've committed to this thing, so I'm not going to be able to do X, Y, Z. Need you to step up in this way. Which makes me think about, Adam, I'm always grateful to have a man in these conversations, because I think many of the line managers and leaders and bosses who pay for their teams to take part in the bond are men. And for the most part, that's great and supportive, and there's a relationship there where there's open dialogue and curiosity. But I also know that there's a bunch of men, and maybe some of you will relate to that who are here in the virtual room with us today, where there's, maybe fear is too strong a word, but maybe there's a bit of nervousness around who is it my place to talk to my women staff about something that feels as personal as confidence. And there can be a bit of a resistance around, like, I don't want to say the wrong thing and I don't want to upset anybody. And sometimes that's easy because the person's been really open and said, look, this is something I'm struggling with. It's something I need help with. And you can be like, look, I found this thing. But for others, that conversation might be a bit more sensitive or a bit more nuanced. So I wonder if what you would share with the kind of men in the room who are thinking, I know lots of women in my organisation who need this, but I don't quite know how to go about making that happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always the case that when you're having like a development chat with anybody, like male or female, giving somebody the feedback that they need to be more confident is often like, it's almost like the worst bit of feedback, because someone looks at it and like, well, what am I supposed to do with that?
What does that mean?
Like,
yeah,
I just go get an injection of it and I'm like, oh, I'm great now. Like, now I'm confident. It's a really, really difficult one. But actually, through having, the upfront bonds that were running, it was an avenue for us to explore and talk to people about. So rather than, confidence being kind of a bit of a taboo because there's not really much you can do, it was, obviously you construct feedback in a positive way with specific examples, but then the bond was a route to be able to try and do that. I think the other thing is that we had one cohort that went on this, like Lauren said at the start, it was a 2-day in-person that seemed to kind of go down in legend around them all being in a room and silently walking back towards the rest of the group, and people ended up in tears, and they were talking about how transformational the experience was. So actually, when we would almost like say to Lauren, we want 20 people to come on the next bond, we were always oversubscribed, and it was often because people had heard about other people's experiences and then were drawn towards it. So it meant you didn't have to push people; they were pulled towards it because of the kind of like positive internal sentiment and PR about it. I don't think we ever struggled to fill a bond. I think we were always oversubscribed, and if anything, when you did prompt somebody, you were often having to look at the list of people that had said they wanted to go on it and taking somebody off to fit somebody on that you were having to do that with. So cool. I definitely think like a good news story and it being something that people are drawn towards rather than pushed towards is quite important. I mean, because it'd be pretty shitty, wouldn't it, that you turned up to the bond and you're like, why are you here? And it's like, because my boss told me I wasn't confident enough.
Yeah. Yeah. And I actually do have a whole piece on that. I wrote an article called like why telling your team to be more confident doesn't work. And the article's digging into exactly as you just said, Adam. It's it's often unhelpful, but it's often a conversation that ends up kind of rooted in bias and prejudice and unhelpful ideas, where it's what the person's really saying is, you're not being confident in the way that I understand what confidence is. And, you know, when there's different genders, different races, different classes, different sexualities in those conversations, it does just become like, what is it we're actually talking about? Because confidence for me might look totally different to confidence for somebody else. And, you know, that's why we talk about a revolution. It's not come and learn the upfront confidence way and there's 10 boxes and you tick it and then you're done, because there isn't a recipe. It's different for everybody. And it's learning how to find out what that is for you, because for most of us, it's something you're born with. It's something you develop as you grow older. And then for most women and girls, you know, it's taken away. And we know that starts around like as early as aged 8. We can see that, you know, confidence in girls starts to drop in a way that it doesn't for boys. And that's not to say that this kind of fixed idea of confidence doesn't harm men and boys, because I think it absolutely does, because at the other end we have men and boys who are also feeling really pressurized to be this kind of strong, all-knowing, wise alpha version of confidence, which of course, you know, isn't sustainable nor reflective of how complex we are as human beings.
I think that's a really key point there, Lauren. I mean, I was trained to be a leader in the, you know, the late 80s, early 90s, including at the big shoulder pads. And it was all about confidence and command and control and charisma and, you know, balls and all that. And that's dangerous. You know, Adam's talked about innovation. We've talked about everybody, you know, bringing their own voice and bringing, you know, their hearts and hands to work. There can be a real strain, particularly on experienced or leaders with tenure, that they have to have the answer, that they have to speak up. You know, and we're in a world now where we can't be subject matter experts. There's too much going on all the time. We have to ask, we have to lean on other people. And sometimes confidence is about saying, I don't know where to start, or what would you do? So for me, I definitely got an injection of how to unpick some of my confidence that I built up through, you know, decades of leading. And that was one of the reasons that I joined, really, to try and think about, is there a way for me to step back and allow those voices around me to percolate through? Maybe that's a benefit to some leaders, to say, you know, you don't have to walk that path alone. If you can percolate it up in other people, you can share the load, share the joy, share the reward, share the fun. Maybe. Yeah,
I wonder if you could both share maybe like an anecdote or a story of a time where there was a conversation, or you were in a room, or where you witnessed a moment of UPFRONT's impact. And Angie, I guess this could be from your life as a Bond 6 graduate, or maybe some of the people you supported, and Adam, maybe through some of your interactions with the women we've supported at Co-op.
Shall I carry on talking, Adam?
Yeah, do it.
Go for it.
Because one popped straight into my head. You know, we've got some of the women from Sullivan and Stanley on the call today, I know. So there's one moment that really, really sticks in my mind when, and I will call her out, Sophia. So Sophia had been, she'd really wanted to step forward and take more of a lead in the work we were doing with the Amos bursary. So Sullivan and Stanley were partnering with the Amos bursary, which is a bursary for super talented students, boys and girls from an African Caribbean heritage. And she really wanted to bring a group of the Amos sisters in with some experienced consultants, some folks from Sullivan and Stanley. So we were supporting Sophia with that. And I remember really clearly the evening of the event, seeing her stand up, be up front, introduce the panel, facilitate questions, put quite tricky questions in. We covered some stuff around, entitlement. We covered some stuff around allyship. And she was beaming all the way through it. And then the next day, I was lucky enough to see a message that she sent to Pat, who's the CEO of the business, to say, last night, I really felt a part of the business. I really felt like a leader. And that really, it sticks in my mind. She's probably weeping away on the call somewhere. She's carried on doing amazing work, and she's had a promotion. In fact, half of the group that joined have been promoted. So she had a promotion and all the nice things that come along with promotion. So that's a really strong anecdote. And then a tangible thing for me, because I joined the bond for a number of different reasons. So I'd wanted to move more into advisory and NED work. So I secured both a NED position and a trustee position with a Newcastle-based charity. It gave me the confidence to talk about why somebody with fundamentally quite a big corporate background might be helpful, and how I could use my experience and all the love and luck I'd had in my career to help them. And didn't feel like I would be too overbearing and be quite helpful. So, it allowed me to take on a couple of new positions. And I've got endless anecdotes really of every one of those 6 members of the team that I've got promoted. Somebody actually left and she's had 2 jobs since. So she's climbed a couple of, rungs up the reward scale. And that's cool. And that's cool. So they're my kind of scattering of anecdotes.
Yeah, and what I love about your story, Angie, because on paper, you are you're a very accomplished senior woman who's at the stage where you're looking at trustee, board roles, non-exec director roles. Because one of the questions I get asked the most is, what level of person is this for? And I can see the flinch when I say, well, kind of everybody. And I know that's like, the rule in entrepreneurship, like you can't build a thing for everybody, or then it's for nobody. And I'm like, but because the reason that the bond is so transformative is because you're bringing together people like Angie, who are super senior at that high, 20 odd years of career behind them, with apprentices, with junior folks in their first job. And because we don't put any emphasis, I don't really care what your job title is, like that's not something we ever talk about. But what we do talk about is values. And I always really appreciated how you talked about, confidence wise, I'm kind of fine. Like it's not really something that holds me back or I get feedback on, but I want to know how I can build it in other people. And I thought that was like a really powerful, it's a really powerful reason and motivator for somebody to be like, I kind of feel like I've got a lot of this boxed off, but I want to know how to scale that in the people around me as much as possible.
Yeah, for sure. So, one of the reasons that I chose to really push for bond and upfront is I really hoped that it would be quite an accelerated experience for the group that joined. So I could, of course, coach those, half dozen women and the whole organisation, and would be pretty confident that I would teach them a thing or two. But I really hoped that the rapid immersion into the programme would speed things up, and it absolutely did. So I love that. And I love your comment about, teaching me how to help others to grow their confidence, how to scale that, and then the other thing was, I don't want to spoil the whole syllabus, but, one of the modules that I got so much from was the piece around allyship. And, it really helped me move my view around entitlement, whatever that means. Again, I'm not going to spoil too much, from a sentiment that maybe was a value for me into actual behaviour. And again, this, it's turning into the Angie show, which is easy for me to do, but I'm not going to talk about, some of the actual tangible things that really helped me move allyship from a sentiment to an actual action. So yeah, as an older woman with that success behind me, I just thought, am I getting a bit blind to the experience around me? Am I turning into that person that's I've got a bit of a playbook and I need to keep fresh. So it gave me all those things.
Thank you for sharing. And Adam?
Yeah, I mean, I remember after, I think it might have been the first or second cohort that we did, one of the individuals who went on the bond worked for me, and I remember it was probably about a week, 2 weeks afterwards, and they came and we had our one-to-one, and they sat down and they were like, I don't think my team is supported enough. I don't think my team gets the recognition that they need. I think these changes need to happen. And if I'm being completely honest, I remember at the time being sat there thinking like, oh shit, like it was almost like, is this what I'm gonna get when people go through the bond? And being honest, that was a little bit uncomfortable, where I'm like, is this just gonna be like a queue of people outside the door now telling me like all the things that are wrong? But she wasn't wrong with what she was saying. She was right, and we made changes, and so it was uncomfortable, but it got us to better outcomes, and pretty quickly, because people were able to say what they thought. A lot of people have these kind of underlying frustrations. I'm sure we all do, and there are not always the right moment to do it, but we always got the sense that post bond people were fairly galvanized by it, and they kind of bounced out of the back of the bond, kind of ready to change the world. And as uncomfortable as that can be for anybody that's on the receiving end of that, necessarily, because it's unexpected in the sense of you're seeing the change in the person, but the change in the person is an incredibly positive thing, and it leads to change.
Yeah, I love that. I can just visualize them all like bounding out like we're on a mission.
Adam.
Yeah. So I'm going to share a couple of questions we've got in the chat. So one is, how can you from someone with leadership capacity, how can you support someone to build confidence when they feel like they have low social capital in their organization? And it's like, we know that that's not great and it's not fair, but if it just is, like, that's where the organization is at. How do you go about supporting that person to build their confidence?
So building confidence is both a behavior and you need to do it structurally as well. So I'd be saying to your leaders or managers within the group, how are you demonstrating that you listen? So what does that look like in your organization? Because it's making me titter. I love Adam talking about the worst complaint is you need more confidence. It's what you need to listen. You need to ask. So build some structures in, and that can be things as simple as groups. So are you putting groups of people together cross-functionally to work on things? If you want to go really grand, have you got somebody more junior on the board who can give a different perspective? Do you allow people to go along with you to client meetings, even just to listen in, to just get a sense of the conversation? I mean, I really hate that kind of like open door language and policy thing, but what are the barriers in the organization to people learning and listening? If you do any kind of, dip tests, employee opinion surveys, any of that kind of stuff, how is that being presented back? So in Sullivan and Stanley and any organization that I support, I put something called Stinky Fish, which is owned by Gus Rossetti, which from Fearless Culture, which is people are allowed to go, hang on, this is something a bit whiffy. How do we do this? So you've really got to build listening in at every level. And listening can also be things like retrospectives. So are you allowing people to practice giving feedback and maybe saying things that are less harmonious? They're just small ways that everybody can democratically share their opinion. So there are small behaviors and structural pieces that you can build in so that people have a voice throughout. But cross-fertilizing work groups as much as possible. And also finally, not confusing confidence with extroversion. Confidence isn't about being the loudest person. So Are you, training your leaders and managers to listen, to have great developmental conversations, which Adam's talked about? What does that look like in terms of listening? So the opposite way to come at confidence is to really boost listening.
Nice. Adam?
I'm going to have to profess to feeling a bit thick and not fully understanding the social capital part of the question, but it sounds like Angie answered it amazingly well, so we can gloss over my northern working class lack of understanding and go on to the next
No,
one.
not at all. All the round of applause for northern
We're
working
all
class
northern.
people. First
We're
of
all
all,
northern. It's a northern group today. It's a northern panel.
okay, well, how about this question for you, Adam, from Niall? Sadly, some of our leaders have got to where they've got to by undermining other people's confidence. Any tips for dealing with those types of folk? Niall said as a commissioner, but I guess just in general, like we've all worked in teams and organisations where that the person is where they are because they've, there's been that type of pattern.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's fairly prevalent, I think, in kind of some of the bigger companies, and especially some of the bigger retailers, because kind of like retail culture, from the shop floor is very kind of shouty, work to rule, management drives performance, and so you've seen people that have kind of like rised through the ranks, and then all of a sudden they're in a fairly senior position, and I don't think they may or may not know that they're intentionally kind of like downplaying people's capability, but they're certainly leveraging that for their own benefit. And I think it's a really difficult one to answer, isn't it? Because I've worked with some people like that, and being completely honest, just not managed to find a way through at all. And you can try loads of different things, and you can come at it from different angles and whatnot, but unless you go toe to toe with them, but actually, like, if that's just not who you are, it can be incredibly difficult. I think when I saw the question, I thought about the commissioner part. Sorry. I think for me, the interesting thing there is framing up front, not necessarily about confidence. Because if you say to a hyper confident senior leader, like, I want to pay for confidence training for my team, you could easily get the response of, why, they're not confident already, or, oh, well, if they've not got it now, they'll never get it. But actually, whereas if you frame upfront as, I want to spend some time investing in people's personal development, I'm going to work on team efficiency, I'll work on people's ability to work together, our ability to innovate, that kind of stuff is likely to get the thumbs up. And up front is all of those things. You're not lying, you're just framing it slightly different. Yeah, so rather than framing the kind of the output, you're framing the outcome. I think that's probably the better way forward in terms of some of those individuals. Yeah,
really, I think it's really spot on that the word confidence can sometimes hinder you in those conversations, and it's something that keeps me up at night, because obviously it's like the key word around our product and our brand, but the number one piece of feedback we always get is like, it's so much bigger than that. Confidence is a thing that affects every single part of your life. So I think reframing it, whether it's reframing it to be really linked to workplace performance, reframing it for yourself. For example, this week on Instagram, we're really digging into money and finance. It's like, for individuals, particularly women, we know that confidence is not number one, but it's on the list of things that is a barrier when it comes to financial literacy, negotiating pay, pricing yourself, all these different things. So we're out of time now. So what I would love to, I'm going to end on one question, and huge thank you to everybody who has spent this lunchtime with us. If you have enjoyed this conversation, please talk about it on LinkedIn or Instagram or wherever you like to hang out on the internet, because that makes it much easier for us to find new communities and new people to talk to next time. Really big thank you to Adam and Angie for giving up your lunch break to come and hang out with us. But my last question to you both is, there's a lot of people in the call today who are, thinking about enrolling their teams, thinking about signing up themselves. Like, what would your kind of parting words to those people be?
Do it. It's a two-way value exchange. It's a really worthwhile investment. The value you put in is the value that you're going to get back. And yeah, I mean, that's all I'd say. I mean, I think I've probably embellished through the last 45 minutes so many tangible ways that I've seen people's contribution increase. And that's going to either be in your organization and your performance, or it'll be somewhere else.
Yes, like that a lot. Adam?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how
You're sitting there with your big Nike
I was going to
jumper
say, just do it.
Yeah,
just do it.
That was the subliminal message the whole way along. That's why I wore it. It was like, just do it, just do it. No, I think it's all right. I mean, what have you got to lose? Like, what is the downside of doing this? The downside is doesn't quite work out, doesn't quite fit for the individual. You still learn something, the individual still learns something, they're still better for the experience. So I really see it as kind of like a no regrets thing to do.
Yes. And they're really, we've built it to be that. It's like there's no risk in terms of everything's recorded. So you miss something, you can always catch up. You get everything in the course forever. The only thing that we lock after 6 weeks is the videos. So you get the reading lists, the activity PDFs, all of that stuff you get to keep forever. And also we do have a money back guarantee. So if you are showing up, taking part, engaging in the content, and after 30 days you still don't see the results and feel a difference, the money back guarantee is there for that reason. And that's part of the reason why we do that very intentionally, is because we really want to take away any risks that people might be worrying about. So I think you're absolutely right, Adam. Thank you for that. All right, well, I'll let everybody get back to their Thursday. I invite you all to come to our next masterclass on May the 11th, which is all about not having imposter syndrome, which is reframing imposter syndrome to really be much more about the complex systems that we're living and working within. It's a business problem to solve. It's a societal problem to solve, not an individual woman to learn how to get rid of feeling like an imposter. So it's totally free. We would love for you to sign up. Give us a follow on Instagram. If you've enjoyed this event, do talk about it online, and I will see you all soon. Thanks again, Adam and Angie.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.